Hello everybody, Steven here with Cardboard Coalition, and today I figured I'd bring you a how to play of Mythic Mischief, not Mystic, which a lot of people say and I say sometimes too, but Mythic Mischief. This is from IV Studios, IV Games Studio, and this is a 1 to 4 player. It takes 45 to 90 minutes and it's for ages 14 plus. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this. So obviously a 2-player game set up here. So let's go ahead and jump into how you set up this 2-player game. So the first thing that you do is you have players pick their factions, right? Once they pick their faction, you go ahead and give them the faction board. And then you give them the totems in their color, all the totems. You give them the dice. And it doesn't say it in here, and you give them any special tokens, like they have their teleports for the wizards. There are the blood tokens for the vampires, right? So give them their special tokens. And then it doesn't say it in here, but also give them their color matching little miniatures, right? And then you go ahead and with their dice, you go ahead and put the dice in the space, and I'll explain the wizards here in a second, but you'll see there's little circles. If you guys can see, there's these little circles on the mat, and you go ahead and put the dice in those circles, and then you make sure the dice match the number up above, right? And we'll explain why this one has that extra tome. If you see over there, the vampires don't. All right. Once you do that, you go ahead and take one more tome and you put it down here in the legendary slot. So you go ahead and slap that down there. At that point, you have the player boards ready to go. So then you want to move on to the board setup. So you want your before lunch cards, which are red, and they have red backs. It says put one of them, I just flip one over. And then you have your after lunch cards. Give both those decks a shuffle. After lunch starts face down. Before lunch, you take one card, put it face up. You're only going to be using that card. And you go ahead and set those there. You place, where is he? Oh, I have him way over here. You place the Tome Keeper on the crest in the middle. So you go ahead and place the Tome Keeper right there. Well, it says to place the Tome Keeper before the cards, but you got what's going on, right? And then you take one tome, I already have them there, per player, and you put them down here on the score track. So we have our blue tome and our purple tome. You go ahead and set it down there. Once that's done, it's time to go ahead and put in the clutter and the tomes, the clutter, and the bookshelves, which I haven't done completely here. So how you put down the tomes, these are our tomes right here, is you look on the card and you put them where the card shows them. So it looks like we have one there, one there. This one looks like it's actually kind of pretty easy. Woo. One down there, one here. And you do this for each team. Now there is some differences if you're playing a 3-player or 4-player, but you guys can go ahead and check those out if you want. So you go ahead and put the tomes out. Once the tomes are out, you go ahead and you place the destination tokens, which I did backwards once again. But as you see on this card, it says destination tokens and tomes, but there you go. So you see the 1, the 2, the 3, you go ahead and put them out. 1, 2, 3, you put them in the space that the card says. Now the one thing that goes on that they don't tell you is that these circle spaces, those are your secret entrances. So later on, we'll talk about secret entrances. That's how you know where your secret entrances are on the board. All right. So we've gotten our tomes out. We've gotten our destination tokens out. After that, what we need to do is put out the bookshelves and the clutter. I think they call them clutters. I'll have to glance, but the clutter stuff. The clutter stuff, clutter tokens. All right, so here it is. In the book, during setup, they give you 3 different ways that you can set it up. Or you can go ahead and do drafting, and it goes back and forth between the first player and second player. They pick a bookshelf, put it down. In the drafting, there's always 10 bookshelves. There's always 10 bookshelves, and there's always 4 clutter pieces. Or you could just follow what's in here. So we've gone with the layout 1. And we put all the bookshelves, and all the clutter. All right, once that's all done, you're almost ready to go. Both players take one of their die, they roll them, and whoever has the highest number, so let's go ahead for argument's sake so I don't have to redo a whole bunch of stuff, say that's the roll. So blue gets to decide who goes first, who goes second. So blue's gonna go ahead and decide to go first, which puts purple as second, or the wizards as second, right? And you go ahead and put your die back, make sure you put it at whatever at the dot and make sure it matches what number's above it. Now, because this the wizards are going second, they get to go ahead and get a tome, right? So their board would look like this, but because they're going second, they go ahead and get a tome, and they get to place a tome on their board. And in this instance, they're just going to go ahead and place it in movement, which moves all the dice one space to the right. So one more step before we're ready to go. You go with the first player. They go ahead and they place their mythics on the board. I'm just going to do it randomly, right? We're going to randomly set them all over the board. When you do it, you're going to want to think about where the Tome Keeper is going to go first, knowing that the Tome Keeper is going to move. This shows the movement for the Tome Keeper, 4 spaces. After lunch has it, it's just on the opposite side. Tome Keeper moves 3 spaces. All right. So we're just setting our guys down. When you're placing these guys, they're not allowed to be placed, sorry, I hear the air conditioner kicking on, not allowed to be placed where the Tome Keeper is, where any other mythic is, or where there are tomes. So no tomes, no Tome Keeper, and no mythic. So we're going to go ahead. You can set in clutter if you want. You can set on some of these just to show you guys. I'm going to do it. I'll set one right here, and we'll set the last person, I don't know, over here. All right. Now we're all ready to go, and we know that the vampires are going to be first players. And there's thunder outside. If it sounded like a gunshot to you guys, it wasn't. It was thunder. All right, so here we go. We're just going to go ahead and follow. It doesn't tell you to put these out, but you have 4 of them, so you give each player a player aid. So we'll follow the player aid. So you have these 3 phases to go through on your turn. The first phase is spend actions. Now, on your board, you have different actions. You have, and they give them different names for each person, but the top action is moving your character. The next action down is moving an opposing mythic. Next action down is moving bookshelf. And the last action moves the Tome Keeper. Down here you have legendary actions and after lunch actions, which you can't use after lunch until you get to the after lunch side. So what goes on is as you decide to do things, you tick these down. So if blue wants to move, right, let's say this one wants to move 1, they tick this down 1. So now they have 0, right? Now, when you move, you can move through the Tome Keeper. The Tome Keeper, you can move through them. You can move through your own guys. You can move through enemy guys. Anytime you pass through or land on one of these spaces, you will get one of the tomes to go ahead and use for later. So he moved 1. If he wanted to go into this clutter, he would have to move 2, right, to get into the clutter. So you'd have to move 2 spaces. Now he's used up all of his move actions. He still has move other players, and he has move bookshelves. Now those are different. I'm not going to go into them because they're different for each character. But just remember, this means move other characters or other mythics that aren't you. And this means move bookshelves. And they all have their own flavor to that. These 2 are the same. These 2 have their own flavor. So then you would go through and you do all those actions. Now you cannot move through bookshelves. This would be considered a corner. You can't go through that. But you also cannot move diagonally. You move orthogonally, right? Now, there are some terms. Let me see if I can grab the book to show it to you guys, because they actually do a really good little aid in here to show you guys. There are some terms to kind of be familiar with, right? You have adjacent and neighboring. Adjacent means orthogonally, right? See, the Tome Keeper is adjacent. This is not adjacent. It's probably hard to tell because there's a bookshelf, right? So adjacent, adjacent, not adjacent, adjacent, right? And then you have neighboring, which can be any of the spaces around them. But neighboring also can be blocked by bookshelf. So with this character, this is not considered neighboring. Neighboring, 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 not neighboring, right? If that makes sense. So you think about things as in adjacent and neighboring. Now, even the Tome Keeper, when he moves, actually takes 2 to go into clutter, but we'll get into that in a minute. So once you go through all of these, let's just say for argument, well, we could do it really quick. This person decides to move that shelf. Whoop, that's the wrong thing. This is the shelf one. Decides to move the shelf. And then you go ahead and go here. And anybody in line of sight, they can move, right? They can get them to come closer. But everybody is pretty close, so it's going to be kind of hard to move closer. And like I said, in the back of the book, it gives you the movement for each person so you can understand their special abilities. And like I said, they give them different names, but it's basically, I know I'm doing this a whole bunch of times, but move yourself, move a mythic, move a shelf, move the Tome Keeper. Just keep that in mind. All right, so let's go ahead and say they go through all their moves, so they can't use that one. So now you move on to the next phase, which is the Tome Keeper. The Tome Keeper, we know, moves 4 spaces, and he's going to move to his first destination. Now, he moves 1, right? He's going to go the shortest path, right? And if there are equal paths, whoever the active player is, like right now it's the vampires, they could pick which way the Tome Keeper goes. So he's going to move the shortest path. Now, the Tome Keeper, when he moves into cluttered areas, it's just like anybody else. That takes 2. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4 movement. Now I'm just going to say right now so you guys know, anytime an action from one of the characters, like moving the Tome Keeper, right, they'll move close to your mythic. They'll move 1 space closer to your mythic. That doesn't count the 2 movement because you're forcing them to move. If there is something that causes one of their actions that cause another mythic to move, right, or let's say they're causing this mythic to move, it doesn't take 2 movement. That they can move them there for free. So just keep that in mind. When you are moving or the Tome Keeper is moving into it takes 2. All right. If the Tome Keeper goes through an enemy's mythic, let's say that they were right here or even lands. Let's say that they ended up right there. Tome Keeper goes 1, 2, 3, 4. This person gets given to the wizards, right? And they would lose a point, but right now they have no points. And then the active team would gain a point. If the Tome Keeper for any reason goes through one of your own people, you lose a point, right? He passes one of your people, lose a point. He passes and captures. What he's doing is catching them while they're running around the library. If he catches one of your an opponent's person, you gain a point. And you have all that right here. All right, so let's go ahead and say he moves. Let's, for argument's sake, say he caught this wizard. And then you go down here and you do the cleanup phase. So the first thing in cleanup phase that you do is you take all your dice and you move them to the leftmost. I know it's on this side, but we'll go here, the leftmost position, right? After you do that, you go ahead and add any tomes that you have gotten as you ran around. And remember what I said, when you put a tome down, right, it moves all your dice, right? And the dice, then the third thing you do is you can boost. So let's go ahead and look at the vampires right now. Let's, for argument's sake, say the vampires got one of their tomes. So first thing they're going to do is they're going to move everything to the left. Second thing they're going to do, they're going to take this tome, and we're going to do movement here too. They're going to go ahead and put it in the movement slot. And these look like little, and this is the deluxe version. I didn't say that. The headmaster, I don't know if they all come with the same, what the standard comes with versus the headmaster and all that. So anyways, you go ahead and put the tome in. Then you go ahead and boost. So let's say they're going to boost, what's a good option? Boost one here so they can move, whoops. They can move the Tome Keeper. And they're going to boost one here, right? Once you do that, then you set all the dice. This die obviously goes to 4 because of the number. This one would go to 2, right? 1. This one stays right here because no one did anything with that. And this one goes to 1. The dots are just for the first phase, and you don't get to boost, from everything I can tell. You don't get a boost at the start of the game. All right. So now that they've gone through all this, they've done the cleanup, their phase is over, and you start with the wizards. Or the next player goes, whoever it is. Now when the wizards go, they have one person in this example that got caught by the Tome Keeper. Now, the first thing you do is you take any captured people and you put them on a secret entrance, which is marked from right here, right? See, remember I showed you guys those circles, right? So we're gonna say she's popping in right here. She wants a little bit of revenge. So she's popping in, or he's popping in right there. All right, and then from there you start with the first phase, which is move your mythic, right? So there's the mythic phase where you move, there's the Tome Keepers phase where they move, and then there's cleanup phase. And you keep going round and round till the Tome Keeper hits 1, 2, 3, well 2 and then 3. Once they get all those, you go to, you're done with the before lunch card. Once they go to all their destinations. Now, one thing to keep in mind, let's say that the wizard goes through their turns. Let's just argue and say they went through all their turns. Bleep, 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 bleep. Tome Keeper's turn. They're going to go 1. They've hit their destination. You get rid of that token. They still have 3 more movement. They're going to go the shortest route to their second destination. So then they would go, they went 1 here, 2, 3, 4, and then they would stop there, right? Now, let's say we're later on in the game. Tome Keeper has hit all these, right? We're sitting right here. Now it's the after lunch action. First thing you do is you would take all the tomes off the board. Any tomes that weren't taken, they all go off the board, right? And the one thing that just popped in my head right now, if he goes to the destination 3 and he still has movement, let's say he still has 2 movement, he would move towards the crest in the middle. So after he hits his 3rd destination, woo, throwing stuff. That's how we do it. I don't remember where this went. After he hits that 3rd destination, I think it actually went right here. I could be wrong. His extra movement is going to move him towards the crest in the middle, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. But to go into here, he has to have 2. If he doesn't have 2 movement to go inside the clutter, he can't go into the clutter. All right. So before lunch is done, you go ahead and put that face down because you're done, and you flip over, or you have the one card here, you flip it over. There's a couple differences to keep in mind here. He gets 3 movement, and there's only 3 tomes that get put out on the board. All your players stay where they're at. The headmaster, or the Tome Keeper, I keep wanting to call him the headmaster, the Tome Keeper goes there. You go ahead and you set out your tokens. You can flip them over to the purple side. So you have 1 here, there's the 1 space, there's the 2 space, and they can go on top of clutter. And then there is the 3 spaces right here. So you go ahead and set all those down. Then you go ahead and you set down the tomes, or I did this one in the right order. Look at Stephen can go. So each player sets their tome. So there's 1 spot. There is the 2nd spot. And then we have the 1, 2, 3, the 3rd spot. Now, unless it's in the fact, and I haven't looked at it, and that's the FAQ, don't get all excited, guys. Unless it's in there, we realize that sometimes tomes get put down on a space where there's a mythic. And in just the regular rule read through, it doesn't say how that works. So we assume that once your turn starts and you move anywhere or you're just standing there, you get this tome, right? Because you're in the spot where the tome is. You can pass through the spot and get the tome. So at the beginning of your turn, you get the tome. All right, now that the after lunch is all set up, you do the same thing. You run around the board. You take your turns. The Tome Keeper goes. Then you clean up back and forth until you're done. And whoever has the highest score wins the game. Now, if there is a tie, right? You both have the same score. It's whoever has the least amount of tomes on their board here, right? So least amount of tomes that they've collected, not the ones off to the side, not any that are on the board that are there. That is the tiebreaker. If there's still a tie, which happened to me a game ago, if there's still a tie, the player who's going to take the next turn, let's say Wizards went, right? They're purple. Blue was supposed to go next, but it ended because the Tome Keeper made it all the way to his third mark, then the vampires would win the game if everything else was tied. Actually all tied right here. They both have one tome. And you count this one down here. Whoops, I forgot to give him his special ability tome. Now, the one thing that I realized I didn't cover is, well, there's two things, and we'll just go ahead and do it right now. You have your legendary ability. Legendary ability can be used on your turn. You just go ahead and take that tome and remove it from your board, and you do that ability. The only way you get that ability back is when you pick up a tome, when you're moving around and you pick up a tome. On the cleanup phase, you can go ahead and place the tome there, which allows you to do that again. Now, your after lunch abilities, and everyone, if they have them, they have different ones. You could only use after lunch. Is the only time you can use it. And they all have different things that they do, so you would have to go ahead and read through and see what those different things are. But that's how you go. You go around, you go through these phases. Just remember, first put your wizards on secret entrances. Then you go mythic phase, do all these moves. Then you do your tome keeper phase. Then you do your cleanup phase until the tome keeper has hit their final destination. Or there's one other thing, someone can hit 10 points. Once a team hits 10 points, game's over. If the tome keeper gets to the final destination, game's over, and you look at who has the highest score. In ties, you go through the ties. And that is how you play Mythic Mischief from IV Studio. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm Steven, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.